Hello and welcome to New Frontiers on CCTV International. I'm Ji Xiaojun in Beijing. And today we continue the fascinating story of Kunqu opera. In the late Qing dynasty, after 500 years of development, Kunqu opera faced the greatest crisis in its existence. In Beijing and the regions south of the Yangtze, Kunqu troops disbanded one after another. But even then, Kunqu clung on to its popularity among the people who were traditionally its most fervent fans, the well-educated. So when Kunqu opera was at its lowest ebb, Cai Yuanpei, Wu Mei, and some other great educators and masters of Chinese literature brought it to Peking University. At the same time, a Kunqu workshop was set up in Suzhou. But would Kunqu's future be brighter as a result of all the efforts being made?
Up to the time of the May 4th movement in 1919, the new culture flooded China in a variety of forms. In Shanghai, movies and gramophone records had become popular among city people, and for Pathé Phono Cinema China, business was booming. The opera stage was working hard to keep up with the quickly changing cultural environment in order to gain a foothold in this new cultural movement. Peking opera master Mei Lanfang began staging modern productions, or at least new versions of classical works. The temptation to make commercial profits was too great for anyone to resist. With his new approach, Mei Lanfang was making at least 20,000 silver dollars for a month of performances, at a time when a typical white-collar worker was making just 100. But while this overwhelming tide of commercially oriented entertainment was sweeping Shanghai, not far away in Suzhou, tradition had shut itself away inside a garden, and it was being passed orally from one generation to the next. The efforts paid off. 3 years later, when the children completed their studies, each of them had learnt more than 100 dramas by heart. And when the young performers received stage names for performing tours in 1925, each name included the character Chuan, meaning to carry on. In their stage names, the character following Chuan had one of four radicals: jade, grass, gold, or water. Jade was for those who would play male roles. Grass was for those who would play female roles. Gold was for those who would play roles with painted faces. This suggested that their singing would sound like booming bells. The final character, Water, was for the rest of the roles, including clowns, signifying a glib tongue. As the most important group of Kunqu performers in modern history, these young people made their debut on stage.
《传字辈》最重要的意义不在于他们那个时代他们演出，《传字辈》最重要的意义是在于他们的身上传递下来的这个口传心授的这个传承。换句话说，我们讲的非物质文化传承，或者是非实物，没有一个东西在那里的这个传承，它必须是口传心授的。而在那个时代，并没有拍电影，也没有录像，那你说怎么传下来？那么我觉得传字辈在整个 人类历史上，在中国文化跟艺术、舞台艺术历史上最重要的就是这50-60个小孩，他就把这个东西传承下来，带在他身上。
From the outset, Mu Oju had planned to retain these children in his factories after they graduated from the workshop. His hope was that they would work in his factories to support themselves between performances that would promote and preserve Kunqu. But by 1927, he was seriously disillusioned. Combined, the social turbulence and financial crises of the time proved too much for his factories to bear, and one after another, they were closed. He was no longer capable of supporting his beloved Kunqu workshop, and once again it was in financial crisis. This photo, taken in 1928, shows the young performers ready to set off on an heroic quest to save the day for Kunqu. Young and energetic and fully prepared with all the skills required for their roles, the children were determined. In them had been placed the hope that Kunqu would be carried on and eventually be fully resurrected. So, bracing themselves against all difficulties, they set off on a Kunqu colonizing mission. In Shanghai, they appeared on various stages performing for days in a row under the name the New Tunes Troupe. The troupe became big news in Shanghai. On their debut, celebrities streamed into the theatre, among them Xu Zhimo, Lu Xiaoman, Zhou Xinfang and Gai Jiaotian, all famous literary figures or established opera masters.
第一次上海啊，倒是很多都是海上有名的名流都来看的，这个约翰云，尤世凯的儿子约二爷，约翰云也来看戏，那是很威风的，
But just as these children were making some headway in their cultural mission, the situation in Shanghai worsened and business for the troupe became very slow. Worse still, the members of the troupe began to argue among themselves. After what turned out to be a failed mission to revitalize Kunqu, in 1931 the troupe returned to Suzhou. The New Tunes troupe was disbanded in June of 1931, leaving its members to fend for themselves. but some, including Ni Chuanyue and Jiang Chuanjian, remained on in Suzhou under the direction of Gu Chuanlan to continue performing. The young performers who continued with the work were committed. Refusing to yield to fate, within half a year they established another troupe. The new troupe was called Xianni, but once again they met with failure. It seemed that intellectual audiences had deserted them. But the greatest destruction was yet to come. In 1937, the performers lost all their costumes and props. It was the Japanese bombardment of Shanghai. The Xianni troupe was in a dire situation, its members struggling to make a living, ready to take any work they could do. Some joined other troupes, while some left behind forever the genre they had studied. Zhao Chuan died in the street one cold, snowy night. Shi Chuanjian died of typhoid during the War of Resistance against Japanese aggression, and no one ever found out what became of Chen Chuanyi, the youngest.
The troupe's goal of revitalizing Kunqu opera had proved elusive. It seemed that despite the efforts of members of the educated class to help, nothing could be done to reverse the tide. For a decade, Kunqu opera disappeared completely from the stage.
Zhang Chonghe came from a prominent family, her grandfather having been a high-ranking official in the late Qing period, her father a famous educationist in the Republic years that followed.